At first glance, the U.S. response to the situation seemed unusual. When they said they would set up their own blockade in the Strait of Hormuz, many people wondered why a blockade would be answered with another blockade. Wouldn't this just make the problem worse? But as time went on, it gradually became clear that America's plan was working. What Iran feared has already happened. And it wasn't because of direct fighting, but because of a quieter yet more destructive move. It all started after a series of airstrikes under Operation Epic Fury. Because of this, Iran was forced to retaliate, but not in the traditional way. Because their navy was almost destroyed, they could no longer compete in conventional naval combat, so they changed their strategy. Instead of using large ships, they used drones and small but fast boats to make the Strait of Hormuz dangerous. It may not look like a classic blockade, but it's effective. Suddenly, it became risky for cargo ships and oil tankers to pass through. Because of this, many ships were forced to just stay in the Arabian Gulf. As for those who dared to cross, they had almost no insurance coverage, or the premiums were extremely high. Imagine, every trip was like a gamble, and that's when the global markets started to shake. Oil prices soared, reaching over $100 per barrel. This was felt all over the world. The U.S. saw this and realized that airstrikes alone were not enough. Even though they had already damaged Iran's military power from the navy to air defenses, this still didn't solve the problem in the Strait of Hormuz. This was a different kind of battle. This was not a traditional war, so they took a new approach. The U.S. implemented their own blockade, a counter-move against Iran's strategy. But this time, it was more organized and more controlled. The target was to prevent Iran's cargo ships and oil tankers from leaving their ports and passing through the Strait of Hormuz. And this is where things get serious. This isn't just a battle at sea, it's now an economic war. As time goes by, Iran's economy is gradually being strangled. If this continues, their government might be forced to agree to any deal the U.S. puts on the table. In the current situation, the effects are strongly felt. According to Reuters on April 27, almost no ships are passing through the Strait of Hormuz. Imagine, from the usual 125 to 140 vessels per day, it dropped to just 7 within 24 hours. And out of those 7, only 1 came from Iran. And it's not even certain if its journey will continue. What's even more serious is that up to 37 Iranian merchant vessels were forced to turn back since the blockade was enforced. On April 13, this was America's real objective, to turn the situation around. While Iran used fear to disrupt the flow of trade, the U.S. is using pressure to bring Iran to a complete standstill. Now it's just a matter of time, and in this fight, it's clear who's running out of it. While the whole world is busy dealing with rising oil prices, Iran is facing a much bigger problem. Because of the current situation, almost no Iranian oil is reaching the countries it should be selling to. And the reason is a clear blockade: the U.S. The U.S. isn't just imposing a blockade on the Strait of Hormuz. Even Iranian ships that manage to pass through the strait are still not safe. According to a report by Australia's ABC on April 20, there are U.S. warships stationed right at the exit of the Strait of Hormuz.
The Central Command at the US Defense Department says that it has sent 2 Navy destroyers, 2 warships, and that they have passed through the Strait of Hormuz.
Their mission is to apprehend or stop any Iranian ship that tries to escape. And this is not just a simple threat. There have been actual interceptions. Donald Trump himself even recounted how they stopped an Iranian ship. According to him, the U.S. Navy literally stopped it by shooting holes in the ship's engine room. It's a direct way to make sure it couldn't leave. The target ship was an Iranian-flagged vessel called Tosca, and most likely this wasn't the only incident that happened. According to Mark Montgomery, it's possible that 3 to 4 Iranian ships have been intercepted by the U.S. up to now. Each of these could be carrying up to 2 million barrels of fuel. If you do the math, each shipment is worth up to $200 million. This means that with every ship intercepted, it's like the Iranian economy is slowly being deprived of its lifeblood. And clearly, the U.S. is pleased with what's happening. Despite a fragile ceasefire between the two countries, it seems that Trump sees the blockade as the most effective way to get what he wants in this region. In a Bloomberg report on April 29, Trump even said that Iran is already in a state of collapse because of the effects of the blockade. And that's not all. According to Scott B. Sant, Iran is running out of storage for their oil. Because their ships can't leave, the supply just keeps piling up. And when the storage is full, they have no choice but to reduce production. That's a huge blow to Iran's economy, especially since they've already been struggling before. So now the pressure continues, and it looks like the U.S. is ready to keep this up for a long time. According to a report by the Wall Street Journal, Trump has already ordered his advisors to prepare for a longer blockade in the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. didn't get the quick victory they expected from their airstrikes. That's why the game has changed. From a swift attack, it turned into a slow but certain economic war. And out of all the options, this is the one they see as having the lowest risk but the strongest impact. The strategy now is to wear Iran down. Force them to surrender through continuous pressure. Everything revolves around two things: time and the gravity of the situation. And right now it's clear that Iran is running out of time. As their burden gets heavier, in fact, signs of desperation are starting to show. Before, Iran had a firm stance. Now they're slowly giving in. On April 28, according to a report from Euronews, Iran offered to lift their own blockade in the Strait of Hormuz. But there's a condition. They want the U.S. to also remove their ships from the area. It's like a give-and-take deal. There's more. If this happens, they also want to postpone discussions about their nuclear program. But if you look closely, this isn't just a simple negotiation. This is the first clear sign that Iran is being forced to bend. Their leaders already know the truth. The U.S. blockade is hitting them harder than they expected. While Donald Trump is making it clear that he's ready to maintain the blockade for as long as necessary, Iran is getting even more cornered. For their government, it's like the world is slowly closing in. Deep down, they feel they can't withstand this kind of pressure for long. According to Al Jazeera's report, it's unlikely that the U.S. will accept Iran's new offer in its current form. Why? Because Iran is still insisting on holding on to its nuclear program, even though their economy is already being strangled. In other words, Iran wants a break, but they don't want to give anything in return. And for the U.S., that's not acceptable. Trump also stated his opinion directly. In a post on April 29, he said, Iran can't get their act together. They don't know how to sign a non-nuclear deal. They better get smart soon. There was even a picture with it that seemed to be AI generated. Trump holding a rifle with explosions in Iran in the background. Is it just drama? Maybe. But the message, without a doubt, is clear. If Iran doesn't take action, their situation will only get worse. Now the U.S. holds the cards. They saw that Iran is being forced, especially when it offered to lift its own blockade in exchange for the U.S. leaving. This means they're already feeling the pressure. And even though the price of oil reached over $119 per barrel on April 29, Trump still didn't back down, not even a single step. The blockade will remain. And if you think about it, why would they even lift it? Yes, high oil prices are a problem for other countries, especially in the Gulf region. But for the U.S., something more important is happening. Every day, Iran loses approximately $435 million in exports. Think about that. With each passing day, it's like the strength of the whole country is slowly being drained. This is now America's biggest leverage. And this is also the clearest evidence that their strategy in the Strait of Hormuz is effective. The goal is no longer to suddenly bring down Iran. It's quieter, it's slower, but it's more painful. The U.S. wants to weaken Iran's economy to the point where it can't do anything but comply. A government that no longer has the strength to refuse. But there's an even deeper problem. Iran shouldn't only worry about the U.S. Inside the country itself, the situation is starting to heat up. If you remember, the earlier protests also started because of economic problems, and those events were among the things that pushed the tension to escalate into a bigger conflict. Now, as the economy continues to weaken, the possibility of unrest happening again inside Iran increases even more, and their government might not be prepared if that happens. At present, it seems like Iran is left hanging. The strategy they thought would give them control, using asymmetric tactics in the Strait of Hormuz, has backfired on them. The pressure they wanted to apply is now falling on them, and honestly, they have very few options left. When it comes to military matters, they've almost exhausted what they can do. A large part of their military infrastructure has been destroyed. If they try to attack again, their movements will likely be fragmented and uncoordinated. And even more dangerously, this could break the ceasefire between them and the U.S. If that happens, it's almost certain that heavy airstrikes will resume while the American blockade continues. So for now, Iran has only one option left. Wait. Hope for the best. Hope for a miracle that the blockade will suddenly ease, even if they don't give up their nuclear ambitions. But with the way things are going now, that miracle seems very far off. The U.S. position is clear. No miracle is coming to save Iran. While Iran is hoping that something might suddenly happen in their favor, their time is slowly running out. According to Mark Montgomery, they may have only 3 to 4 weeks left before their situation completely collapses. During that period, their income from exports continues to decrease, while their oil storage is getting full. If you think about it, if this lasts for 4 weeks, that's equivalent to 28 days. And for each of those days, the losses continue. In total, Iran will lose almost $12.2 billion. And that's not the only problem. Because of the lack of storage, there's a possibility that Iran will be forced to abandon some of its oil wells. If that happens, it won't just be a temporary problem. It could cause long-term damage to their economy. According to a report by The Independent, there are officials who believe that Iran is close to falling into a deep crisis that won't be easy to recover from. Even after Operation Epic Fury, there are other analyses that give a slightly longer grace period. According to the Jerusalem Post, it is possible that Iran could last up to 3 months before completely collapsing because of the blockade. But even if the time frame is longer, the outcome still isn't good. Because Iran relies heavily on income from oil, the U.S. blocking its exports directly hits the heart of their economy. And if it completely collapses, it's not just money that will be lost. Widespread protests could break out, just like what happened in early 2026. And if that happens, their government's problems will get even worse. Honestly, even now, the effects are already being felt. According to Iran International, Iran entered this conflict with an already weak economy, and it just got worse. Inflation was already high, and it's rising even more. Unemployment is increasing, people's real income is going down, and at the same time, they're experiencing what's called stagflation. It's a situation where inflation is high and economic growth is slow at the same time. And remember, all of this was already happening even before the U.S. imposed its blockade. The more than $400 million that comes into Iran every day, even if the entire economy doesn't collapse immediately within a few months, it's clear that it's already on the brink. Just think, inflation has already reached over 50%. And in just 20 days at the end of 2025, the value of their currency dropped by 20%. It gets even worse. After their conflict against Israel in the summer of 2025, the total drop in the value of the rial reached 60%. This isn't normal. This isn't a healthy economy. This is an economy that's just standing on the edge of a cliff. One more step and it will go over the edge. And it looks like that push is coming from the U.S. blockade. There's more data from Ynet News. According to them, around 1 million Iranians have already lost their jobs since Operation Epic Fury began. And millions more are at risk of losing their livelihoods, especially if the country's oil industry completely shuts down. It's not just oil that's affected. Even Iran's steel industry and petrochemical plants have also been paralyzed. At this point, this is no longer just a simple economic slowdown. It's already a gradual collapse. And as each day passes, the cracks get deeper. As the situation continues to worsen, there's one truth that can no longer be denied. Iran is gradually being dragged down by its own crisis. Even the industries they once took pride in are now trembling. Their carpet industry, once admired around the world, is also close to collapsing. But what's even more painful is that food is now being affected. In October 2025, food prices increased by as much as 64%. And it didn't stop there. It soared even higher, reaching 105% by February. The most affected were basic foods, bread, and cereal. In just 1 year, from March 2025 to March 2026, the prices of these increased by 140%. Imagine that. The foods that used to be for everyday consumption are now becoming a luxury. And in the middle of this, millions of people are losing their jobs or are at risk of losing them. This is no longer a simple economic issue. It's now a crisis that directly affects the lives of ordinary people. According to the International Monetary Fund, Iran's economy is expected to shrink by 6.1% in 2026. Meanwhile, inflation could reach as high as 68.9% before the end of the year, and unemployment is approaching 10% while the government's debt continues to rise. It's now almost 40% of the country's entire economy. This is the hardest blow to Iran. Almost 90% of their international trade is gone, and that's equivalent to 70% of their total export income. In other words, the lifeblood of their economy was cut off. And remember, the blockade has only been in place for 3 weeks, but it's already this bad. And the truth is, this isn't even the beginning. Iran's economy was already weak even before the U.S. arrived. What the blockade did was just speed up the collapse. Now, it's like they're looking for hope, but it seems there isn't any for now. There's an even more critical moment coming. The meeting between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping is on May 14. Until that's over, it's unlikely the U.S. will back down. That means an additional 2 weeks of hardship. And each day, it gets worse. Now, the question is, how long can Iran endure if they don't comply and don't abandon their nuclear program? Are they ready to face new airstrikes? Inside the country, there are still leaders who remain stubborn. They believe they can endure it. But they're not the ones going hungry. They're not the ones losing their jobs. And this is where everything becomes dangerous. Do you remember the protests last December and January? According to The Guardian, around 30,000 people have died. And now the people are angrier. The government is weaker. It just takes one spark. Things could explode again. And maybe that's exactly what the U.S. is waiting for. Because if you think about it, it's not just the economy that's the target, but a change of the whole system. Now, there's no middle ground in Iran. Surrender or completely collapse. And the most painful part is what they feared is already happening without the U.S. even firing a single bullet. They have control of the situation. And if they need to fight again, they're ready, because they still have something that can completely stop Iran from recovering.